You've just stepped onto the ship that will carry you across the Atlantic. The good news? You've made it out of your country with your life. The bad news? You've just paid your life savings to be herded into a wooden box with 300 other souls and no windows. There's no shower. The food is grey, and you're about to spend the next 2 weeks breathing in the stink of your neighbours. This is not a cruise, it's survival. If you value these quiet moments of history, consider supporting this space by liking or subscribing. Only if it feels right to you. It helps keep the stories flowing. There's something comforting about knowing who's out there, listening in the stillness. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Your words mean more than you know. Now lower the lights, allow your breath to slow and let the quiet settle in. You wake in the dark. Again, you're not sure what time it is because time doesn't mean much down here. There's no light, not unless someone strikes a match or opens the hatch above. The air is thick with sweat and salt and the strange sourness of too many people packed into too small a space. Someone is snoring. Someone else is groaning softly in their sleep. A baby is crying. Or maybe it never stopped. You swing your legs over the edge of the bunk and lower yourself down. The floor is wet. It's always wet. The crew tells you it's from the sea air. You think it's from something else. You step over outstretched legs, careful not to wake the others. The space between bunks is barely wide enough for a child. You make your way toward the water bucket, if it hasn't tipped again, to splash your face. It doesn't help much. A bell rings somewhere above. Not that you can hear it clearly, but you've learned the rhythm. That bell means food. You grab your tin bowl and make your way through the crowd of passengers, all of them carrying the same mix of hope and hunger in their eyes. The food line is long, always. Sometimes it's a kind of porridge, other times a slab of bread stiff with age. Once they gave out meat stew. You don't talk about what was in it. There's no table. You sit cross-legged on your bunk or squat against a barrel and eat with your fingers. The spoon you had was taken, traded maybe, or stolen. A child next to you licks the bottom of their bowl. You hand them the last bit of yours. You're not really hungry anyway. Or maybe you are, but kindness helps pass the time. The smell is part of you now. Not just yours, everyone's. The reek of unwashed skin, of sickness, of slop buckets gone too long without emptying. There are 2 privies, if you can call them that. They are wooden boxes with holes barely shielded from view, and when the ship rocks too hard they overflow. You try to hold it in sometimes, for hours. So does everyone else. No one wants to be the one who slips or soils themselves. One morning the sea is calm enough for the crew to let a few of you go above to clean your clothes in salt water. You scrub your only shirt until your knuckles bleed, then hang it over the rail to dry. It smells better. For now. There is no clock. There is no calendar. Just the slow ticking of waves against the hull and the creaking of boards above. You pass time by listening, to stories mostly. An old man from Naples hums songs you don't know the words to. A girl 2 bunks down tells tales from a book she lost back home. A young couple whispers about the baby they'll name after her mother, if it's a girl. Sometimes people pray aloud. Other times they cry quietly into their sleeves. You write names in your mind. People you miss, people you'll find again. And you wonder if they'd even recognise you now. Your muscles ache. Your back hurts. But today you didn't vomit. And that's something. You close your eyes, lulled by the slow sway of the sea. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. But for now, you rest. The girl from the lower bunk across from yours is talking again. Her voice is low but steady, like the rhythm of the ocean swell. You strain to listen through the chorus of coughs and murmuring bodies. She's telling the story of her grandmother, the one who kept bees near Krakow, who used to rub onion on her grandson's chest when he had a fever, who boiled cabbage until the whole house smelled of it for a week. You've heard this story before, maybe twice already, but it doesn't matter. You listen like it's the first time, because the words hold more than just memory. They hold warmth. Someone laughs. It's the older man near the wall, the one who wears the same wool cap every single day. You don't know his name, but he always has something in his pocket. Crackers once, a piece of dry orange peel. Now he's sharing a joke you can barely understand. Something about a goat, a wedding, and a priest who drank too much wine. Even if the words don't land quite right in your language, you laugh with the others. It's the laughter more than the meaning that matters. You shift on the plank, your back pressed to the wall, knees drawn up. The floor is soaked beneath your thin soles, and the smell hasn't gotten better, it never seems to. But you forget it for a bit. The stink of vomit, of urine, of wet timber and mould, they all fade a little when people begin to talk in that way that puts pictures in your head. Stories turn the walls into windows. They carry you far from the belly of this creaking, stinking ship, into places where fresh loaves sit warm on wooden tables, and the sun still touches your skin without biting wind. The woman who sleeps 2 bunks down from you, her name is Eva, and she has the voice of someone who used to sing lullabies, tells about the mountains near her village. She says they looked like sleeping giants, and the wind smelled of pine and honey. She describes them so gently, so completely, that you can almost feel the cool air brushing your face, even here in this airless belly of a ship where everything is either too damp or too dry. Even the baby is quiet now, lulled by the hush of shared memory. Its mother rocks it gently, humming a tune that might be a prayer, or just a melody carried from another land, one half lost to the sea. You offer a biscuit to the boy beside you. It's broken and stale, and you don't know his name either, but he takes it with a nod. He has wide eyes and blistered lips. He doesn't say much, but tonight he tells you he used to run with goats in the hills before his father died. He says his older brother is waiting for him in New York, and that he'll learn how to fix watches because time is something people always need. You nod. It sounds like a good plan. Everyone has something they've left behind. A sister, a field, a crooked house with a stove in the corner. You talk about these things like they're still waiting for you, whole and untouched. You talk about them like they're still real, because as long as the words live, maybe they are. Sometimes when no one feels like talking, someone sings, not loudly, just enough to stir the air. One night it's a lullaby in Yiddish. Another night it's a worker's song in thick, rolling Italian. You don't know the words, but you hum along anyway. It doesn't matter whose song it is. Here, every note belongs to everyone. There are fights sometimes, of course. Sharp words when someone spills water, when someone jostles another in sleep. There's never enough room, never enough food, and tempers snap like old twine. But even then, someone always steps in. A look, a gesture, a reminder. We're all in this together, jammed into this floating world with no land in sight. One floor, one wall, one terrible meal at a time. You notice your hands more now. They're calloused from gripping the railing when the ship lurches, from helping lift a bucket that's spilled too often. You run your fingers over your palms sometimes and wonder if they'll heal once you're on land, or if they'll always carry salt and sorrow in their lines. A boy from the lower quarter knows how to draw. He scratches shapes into the damp wood with a nail he found. He draws horses, and once, a proper church with a bell tower. He says he saw it in Antwerp before the ship. You watch him as he works, the way his eyes narrow, how he straightens with pride when someone compliments his lines. They say he'll be a sign painter someday, maybe even more. You don't talk much about the people who aren't here anymore. The girl whose cough turned wet and red, the boy who was carried up the stairs and never came back down. Their names float in the silence, but they are mostly whispered, not spoken. You all carry them in your own way, eyes turned downward, words caught in your throats. Hope sits beside you like a fragile sibling. You feed it stories. That's what keeps it alive. You talk about what it will be like in the city, how the streets will be wide, how the houses will smell of bread baking, how everything will be clean and new. You picture a room with a window. Just one window would be enough. You joke about what food you'll eat first. Roast chicken, apples, anything not salted or boiled to death. You imagine real tea, warm and sweet, not the bitter broth that sometimes passes for it on deck. Outside, the sea groans, the hull moans and the lantern flickers in its cradle. Water drips somewhere behind you, steady as breath. Tonight someone says they'll change their name when they arrive. Make it sound less foreign, less strange. You think about your own name, how it sounds in your mother's voice. You're not sure if you want to wear a new one yet. You lie back down, curling into yourself as best you can on the crowded plank. You close your eyes, and still the stories linger. You hear a whispered joke, a remembered scent, a promise wrapped in a stranger's voice, and you realise you've never been this far from home. And yet somehow, in this moment, you're not entirely alone. You don't remember falling asleep, but you wake to shouting. Not from nearby, not in the bunks around you, but above, somewhere on the deck. A sharp, urgent voice, full of panic and purpose. Then heavy feet stampede overhead, booted and quick. You freeze with your eyes wide, heart thudding. The air seems thicker now, your breath catching in your chest. You smell it before you feel it. Brine and rot and something sharp like copper, and underneath it the unmistakable bite of fear. The ship groans deeper than usual, its old wood bending and complaining in its own language. The boards above creak and snap in protest, and somewhere nearby, a child starts whimpering. Someone hushes them, but their voice is shaking. You sit up slowly, your blanket falling away, the dampness clinging to your back like a second skin. You hear it then, the sea. Not the soft lull of usual, not the regular swish slap that carries you through your hours. This is different. Angry, violent. The crash of water against the hull shakes your bones. You can hear it smash against the upper portholes, loud and wet and unrelenting. There's shouting above again, shorter this time maybe from the captain, and then the unmistakable sound of something tumbling, barrels maybe, or people. Instinctively you clutch the edge of your bunk. Your fingers slip along the wet wood, never dry but now slicker than usual. The tilt of the floor feels wrong, not the lazy sway you've grown used to. This is steeper, more sudden shifts. You feel yourself leaning hard to one side, then the ship rights itself again with a lurch that throws several people from their sleeping spots. You hear a cry as someone hits the floor, someone shouts water, and that word rings through the belly of the ship like a bell tolling. Not the water outside, but inside. You scramble down and feel it. Just a thin film near your feet at first, then deeper near the middle aisle. Ice cold and creeping. It sloshes with the movement, a terrible rhythm soaking your hem, your ankles, your sense of safety. A woman screams. A man curses in Polish. The lamps swing dangerously above, their light flickering with the motion. The shadows stretch wide across the walls, dancing, taunting. You can't tell how deep it gets near the far wall because the light doesn't reach there. You don't want to know. The air reeks now, of mildew and stomachs emptied in fear. You hear someone retching near the bucket. Others weep openly. The children cling to their mothers, and the mothers cling to nothing but air. There's a rush toward the ladder, not a stampede, not yet, but a tense, hungry press. People reaching, desperate for the hatch to open. But it's fastened shut from above, locked. You press against the wall, your back feeling every rivet in the boards. Someone, Eva maybe, grabs your hand. Her skin is cold, her fingers wet. She's whispering a prayer in a language you half understand. You don't say anything, you just hold on. And then, the wave hits. You don't see it, of course. You feel it. The way the ship rises, impossibly high, then tilts, suspended, as if deciding whether to fall. And when it falls, the crash is deafening. A roar of water and groaning timber and 100 voices crying out at once. You're thrown sideways. You land on someone. They gasp under your weight. You both struggle up, bruised and horrified. Another wave, smaller this time, but you feel it too. The fear doesn't leave between them. It only builds. The cold is unbearable now. The water at your feet is climbing. Slowly, but it doesn't stop. It laps higher along your boots, creeping up your shins, and the smell. It's stronger, oily, metallic. You realise some of it might be from the lamps, fuel leaking. The hatch finally opens with a crack of light that blinds you. Rain pours in, sideways with the wind. A crewman appears, his slick coat shining, his hair plastered to his face. He yells something, but it's lost to the chaos. All you hear is buckets and hold fast. Some climb the ladder toward the storm, hoping to help. Most stay. There's nowhere to go. You take one of the wooden pails and join the others, scooping up the seawater around your feet, staggering to the back corner where it can be dumped into a channel. It's pointless. You know it. But it gives your shaking hands something to do. Time stretches and bends. You don't know how long you work. The storm doesn't leave quickly. It fights. The ship lurches under every blow, but somehow it stays afloat. Later the rocking slows, still present, but calmer. The hatch closes again, shutting out the light and the screaming wind. The crewman disappears above. The water at your feet begins to recede, soaked into the floor and whatever rags people shoved into cracks. Someone finds bread. It's soaked but passed around anyway. You chew without tasting, just to feel something. A baby coughs. An old man hums again, quieter now. He sings of home, or safety, or both. You rock with the motion of the sea, breath uneven, eyelids heavy. Your skin still smells like salt and fear. That night you sleep curled tight against the wall trying to stay dry. The wet seeps in anyway, but sleep comes, eventually. And the sea, for now, lets you. You only notice the coughing when it won't stop. At first it was just a sound in the background, like the creak of the beams or the splash of the sea against the hull. Someone hacking in the dark, a ragged breath now and then. But now it's constant, deep rasping coughs that scrape from someone's chest like nails on old wood. Wet choking gasps that end in groans or silence. You try not to look, but you know who it is. A woman 2 bunks down, skin pale as the sheets she shivers beneath. She hasn't eaten in days. Her husband holds her hand, murmuring in a language you don't know, over and over, as if the sound could keep her here. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders. It's damp, always damp, and the air is soupy with sickness. It clings to your skin, to the roots of your hair, to the back of your throat. Each breath feels like it's borrowed, too close to someone else's exhale. You wonder if it's safer to sleep sitting up, if lying down lets the bad air sink into your lungs. But there's no room to stretch either way. You shift, trying to find a patch of wood under your blanket that isn't soaked through. Someone vomits into a bucket nearby. No one flinches anymore. It's just another sound among many. The groans, the restless turning, the sniffles turning to sobs. There are children here too, listless and slack-eyed, their small bodies curled tight against the cold. Their mothers wipe their faces with stained rags, whisper lullabies with cracked lips, pretending everything is fine. But the croup has taken one already. A baby wrapped in a shawl has gone still, and the mother still holds her, even now, rocking gently in the dim. There is no silence on this ship, only the hush that follows when someone dies. You saw it first with a man across the way. He had a cough for days, then stopped speaking even when his son shook him. By morning, the crew members came below, faces drawn and eyes averted. They didn't say a word. They just wrapped him in a sheet, tied it off with rope, and carried the shape of him up the ladder. You listen to the boards above you groan. Listen to the splash that followed. And then nothing. No prayer, no marker, just the sea swallowing him whole. It happens more now, quietly, discreetly. The worst of the sick are moved to the far end of the hold, where the air feels different, thicker, as if dread has a smell, sour and metallic. When the crew opens the hatch, the sunlight slants in, motes of dust and moisture dancing like ghosts. For a few minutes, you can almost pretend to feel warmth, but the light only shows what the dark has hidden. The sores, the stains, the shallow breathing of those slipping away. You try to help when you can, wringing water into someone's mouth, sharing your crust of bread, folding a scarf and laying it across a brow. But there's so little to give, so little you can do. The sailor who understands a bit of your tongue says it's dysentery, or maybe typhus. He shrugs and wipes his mouth with a sleeve already wet with sweat. He says it like the names matter. They don't. Not down here. Your hands smell like vinegar and bile no matter how often you rinse them. The bucket water doesn't stay clean for long. You whisper apologies when you pass people huddled on the floor. There's no space to step, and sometimes your boot lands too near a body. A girl younger than you has blood on her lips. She hides it in her sleeve, but you see it when she coughs. She sees you looking and turns her face to the wall. At night it's the worst. That's when the sobbing starts. Not loud, just soft, almost like lullabies drifting from bunk to bunk. You hear old prayers in 6 different accents: Yiddish, Polish, Italian, Gaelic. Tongues that twist around incantations carried from villages far across a dark sea. They pray for strength, for mercy, for breath. They pray that their children make it to land, that their names will be spoken again in laughter, not in grief. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but your ears stay open, listening, counting the coughs, wondering who won't be here by morning. The boards creak above, footfalls maybe, or just the ship settling deeper under the weight of all it carries. You dream of trees, of air that smells like rain, not rot, of hands that aren't shaking. You dream of your mother stirring soup on a clean stove, steam rising like prayers from the pot. When you wake, your eyes sting, and the smell of sickness is still there. Another body's gone this morning. They don't say who. You stare at the empty bunk until someone else lies down in it an hour later. There's no time to grieve here. No room for it. You hold your breath as the hatch opens again, hoping the open air will help. It doesn't. The light is white and sharp and smells only faintly better. The sea yawns around you, endless, quiet, merciless. You whisper your own prayer under your breath, not because you believe it will keep you safe, but because it's something to say. And even here, even now, you want to believe someone is listening. Sometimes you lie awake even after the lull of the waves has rocked the others into silence. You stare upward into the dark, although there's nothing to see but faint beams of light pressing in weakly through the cracks in the boards. The wood above your head is damp and swelling, the way it always is now. You wonder how many nights you've spent under this ceiling, how many more are still ahead. It's cold. Not the kind of cold that bites so much as it seeps through the fabric of your only dress, into your bones, as if the sea itself is trying to claim you from beneath. The blanket you share with a woman beside you is too thin, and her back is turned away. She coughs sometimes, in her sleep, and you hold your breath each time, just in case it's catching. All around, people twitch and murmur in slumber. One man gasps and mutters a name you don't know, over and over, in a voice like gravel. Another lets out a whimper and clutches something to his chest. A letter, maybe, or a picture smudged from too much holding. A baby cries out in a sudden burst, then quiets again. There's not much difference between night and day here. Just fewer footsteps overhead, fewer bowls clinking, more silence. You close your eyes and try to imagine it again, the place you're going. You've heard about it in 100 different ways. Wide streets, they said, bread shops on every corner, vendors calling out in English, a language you still only half understand, but it's beautiful in your imagination, smooth and bright and quick. Lights that don't go out when the sun does, rent you can afford, shoes with no holes in them. You think about how you'll dress once you're there. Maybe the church will have charity clothes, or maybe someone will teach you how to sew. You've always been good with your hands. You picture yourself in a soft blue blouse and a skirt that doesn't itch. You'll polish your boots until they shine like coins. At night, when you're lucky and your belly isn't twisting, your mind builds whole streets lined with things you've never seen but feel like you should have. A bakery window steams in the winter air, apples stacked in pyramids, children laughing, healthy, clean children, swinging bags full of school books. There's music from a shop, soft and tinkling like bells. Everything smells warm, fresh bread, coal smoke, oils for hair and skin. You walk down the sidewalk and no one stares at your calloused hands. But then you start to wonder, what if it's not like that? What if you get there and it's just more slop lines, just more tin cups and shared blankets? What if you're never quite clean again, never warm? You try not to think about that too much, but it creeps in anyway, especially now, especially in the dark, when your stomach is hollow and your lips are cracked and your skin itches from salt and sweat. You hear someone whispering a prayer into the sleeve of their coat. You can't make out the words, but the cadence is familiar, like a lullaby your mother used to hum over the wash basin. You feel your throat tighten and you press your face into your elbow so no one hears you sniffle. A man coughs from the far corner, the kind of cough that rattles from deep inside. There's a moment of silence after it, a pause where everyone seems to tense. Then the murmurs start again. Someone turns over on their bunk above you, and a few flakes of wood dust fall into your hair. You try to focus on other things, on how many steps it might take to reach the train station once you land, on what the letters from home will smell like, soap, baking, earth. Will your name sound different in this new place? Will they shorten it, twist it? And what about work? You've heard about the garment factories, long hours but steady pay. They say they'll take anyone who can sew a straight seam. You imagine the hum of machines, the heat of steam presses, the weight of cloth across your lap. You imagine your hands mending, strengthening, becoming useful. Your mind slips and reshapes your dreams. No longer the grand boulevards and painted shop signs, but simply a bed of your own. A small window, a table with a single flower, a week without hunger. Someone stirs beside you. It's the girl with the freckles. Her name is Anna, you think. She shifts in her sleep and murmurs something about chickens. Her family kept them, she told you once. She misses the sound. You almost smile. You roll onto your side, careful not to jostle the aching part of your hip that's bruised from the hardboard beneath the straw mattress. A soft moan escapes before you can stop it. Everything hurts. Even your dreams don't dull it, not entirely. But you don't want to sleep yet. You want to hold on to the thought of the city, the hope of it. Better to live in that place, even if only in your mind, than to return to the weight of the hold, the stink, the fear. There are footsteps above, slow, heavy. Someone from the crew, probably pacing the deck. You imagine the stars are visible from up there, that the sea stretches dark and endless beneath them. You'd give anything to see the stars tonight, just for a moment. But you're down here, in the belly of the ship. Down here the air is thick and damp and your dreams are all second-hand, scraps handed down in overheard stories and the soft-spoken hopes of strangers. You close your eyes again and wrap your arms round yourself. You picture your mother's face, not the way she looked when you left, teary and tired, but younger, stronger, singing by the stove. She said your name differently than anyone else has since. You want to make her proud. You whisper her name into the dark, barely louder than your breath. Tomorrow you'll wake again to the creak of ropes, the sting of hunger, the press of too many bodies in too little space. But for now you float between what was and what could be, and somewhere inside that space you drift into sleep. You didn't know how much you needed the stars until the first time you saw them again. It came after a spell of heavy rain and wind, when the ship listed for hours and sleep was something only the most exhausted could find. When they finally opened the hatch above just after dusk, the air that drifted down felt like a miracle. Cool, salt-crisped, clean, in a way that made you forget the stench still clinging to your clothes. The dampness in your bedding didn't matter for a moment. The hunger in your stomach quieted, just enough for your legs to carry you to the top without trembling. They let only a few of you up at a time, so you waited your turn, gripping the cold iron ladder with your raw fingertips, your face tilted up, heart pounding at the promise of open sky. When you emerged, it was like stepping into another world. The stars were everywhere, millions of them, more stars than you've ever known could exist. They stretched across the heavens, sharp and glittering, like someone had torn open the dark and let the light spill through. The sea, surprisingly calm, reflected the shimmer. You couldn't tell where the water ended and the sky began. All of it moved slowly, the swell beneath your feet gentler now. There was no smoke, no cries, no coughing, just the lap of waves and the soft creak of timber. You leaned against the rail, your dress still damp from days before, but the cold no longer bit down so hard. You remember the taste of the air, salty, sharp, alive, different from the heavy breath of the lower decks. You closed your eyes and breathed it deep as if trying to carry it inside you, hide it away somewhere for the next time the ship pitched and the buckets overflowed again. Somewhere behind you, someone began to hum, a low, steady tune, something wordless, something old. Others joined in, barely audible at first, then stronger. One of the boys who shares your bunk pressed his arm against yours for warmth. He didn't look at you. You didn't look at him. But it was enough to feel another heart beating nearby. On another morning, one of the rare calm ones, you were let up before the sun had finished rising. The sky was a long stretch of pale blue-grey, with orange gathering behind the clouds. It looked like it would melt if you reached out and touched it. The deck, still slick with dew, smelled like rope and wood and salt and something like possibility. You walked slowly, letting your feet feel the planks beneath them, your soles sore but no longer blistered. Your body moved like it remembered solid ground, even if your mind didn't dare dream that far yet. The crew didn't smile often, but that morning one did. A younger man with wind-bit cheeks and lines around his eyes, not from age, but from watching too much suffering. He handed you a heel of bread, warm from somewhere, maybe the galley, maybe just his pocket. He didn't speak your language, not fully, but the nod he gave said more than words. You took the bread into your hands, felt the unexpected heat. It was stale at the edges but soft in the middle, and tasted faintly of something buttery. You shared it with the girl beside you, and for a brief moment she laughed with her mouth full, as if she had remembered something she once loved. Another time, you were allowed to help scrub the deck, hard work but outside. The brush scoured your palms raw, but the sunlight on your back felt like a reward. A gull flew overhead, strange, after days of nothing but horizon. You watched it wheel and dive, its cry sharp and bright. You wondered if it would greet the land before you did. There were other moments, small, easily missed, like the way the sea turned silver just before sunset, like molten coins spilled over the edge of the world, or the time a toddler took her first step between the barrels near the mainmast, her mother clapping softly with tears on her cheeks. The baby waved her arms, triumphant, as if she too could cross oceans. Once the wind died to nothing, and the sails sagged. You all feared being stuck, drifting forever. But in that quiet, the air was so still, you could hear the flap of your own heartbeat. That night, someone told a joke, a real one, and people actually laughed. Not out of madness or nerves, but something near joy. The laughter echoed strangely across the open space. It startled a group of gulls roosting on the yardarm. They took off in one loud sweep of wings, catching the amber light of dusk as they vanish toward the pale line of horizon. And sometimes, when the weather allowed, the crew passed down buckets of seawater and let you rinse your face in the open air. The salt burned your cracked lips, your chafed skin, but you didn't care. You tilted your face to the breeze, hair sticking to your cheeks, and for a second you almost felt clean. You learned to find beauty in the way your body stood against the wind, in the lines of salt that dried along the seams of your dress, in the strength of your ankles as you balanced against the ship's rocking. Even your scars, and the ones on your hands from working the galley, the ones on your legs from slipping down damp steps, began to feel like something earned, like proof that you belonged to yourself, even here. One night, just before sleep, the old woman 3 bunks down told you about the aurora. She said it was like the stars dancing, green and blue and fire all at once. You asked if she'd really seen it. She only smiled and said, "Once, long ago." You dreamed of that firelight all night, of skies that shimmered and skies that sang, above lands where the water was clean enough to drink and bread came warm every morning. You don't know how much longer the ship will carry you. No one does. The days blend into each other, the sea never stops moving, and the sores on your heels never truly heal. But you've seen the stars now. You've seen what waits above the smoke and stink and steel. And when the others sleep or cry or whisper their prayers, you keep their stories close and stare upward, listening for gulls and measuring the shape of the clouds. Because even in the filth, even in the dark, even on the longest, coldest nights, the light still finds you. The air is different this morning. You feel it before you even sit up. Cooler somehow, damp but gentler, as if the sea has eased its breathing. It's rare now to wake without someone coughing near your face or jostling your side. But today there's a hush, and it stirs something inside you. Not fear exactly, not hope, but something. You swing your legs over the edge of your bunk and your toes touch the familiar dampness of the floorboards. Only this time, it doesn't feel endless. The dark doesn't feel quite so thick. Somewhere above the creaking wood there's movement. More than the usual footsteps of the crew, you can feel it. A current of nervous energy, a whispering tension. Around you, others are stirring too. A boy sits up 2 bunks down, blinking sleep from his eyes. A man to your left is already pulling on his patched coat, though his hands are shaking. You don't know his name, but you've heard him mutter prayers in a language you don't speak. Today he speaks nothing, just grabs his satchel and stands frozen, like he's waiting for a bell that hasn't rung yet. You follow the scent before you hear the word. It's not the usual stink of salt and sweat and old sickness, though that's still there, always there. No, this is something cleaner, lighter, like wood smoke far off, or bread. Warm places, settled places, the kind of smells that don't belong to the middle of the ocean. Someone calls down the hatch, their voice thick with a language that's not yours. But the meaning travels fast. A shout in Polish turns into excited French, then German, then Yiddish. All pass down the line like a torch. Land. Land is near. We're close. You don't believe it. Not at first. You've heard too many rumours, too many jokes. 10 days ago, someone said they saw New York. 2 weeks ago, it was whales the size of ships. Every time someone claims they've seen something, hope flares up like a candle, then blows out even faster. But this time something's changed. There's a line forming at the ladder. Too many people pressing upward, desperate for air, for proof. The crew shouts, trying to hold them back. "You'll all get your turn," one of them growls in broken words. "Move when we say." You clench your tin cup, though you don't know why, and shuffle closer, squeezed between a girl with wide eyes and a woman holding a baby wrapped in a coat, her own face pale with fever. Neither speaks. No one really does. The air is tight with breath and unspoken questions. How close? How much longer? At last, your turn comes. A nod from the crewman, a gesture upward. The steps are slick from salt and shoes. You grip the wood with both hands, heartbeat fast and heavy in your chest. The light blinds you first, not harsh, but sudden. After so long underground, the grey sky feels like fire. And then, the view. The water stretches out from the ship like a mirror, quiet and endless. But far, on the horizon, there's a faint shape, dark and low. You blink, and it's still there. Not a cloud, not a trick of the waves. It's land. Your knees go weak and you grasp the railing hard. Your fingers dig into the splintered wood as if letting go might pull it out of sight again. Others around you are gasping, pointing, grabbing each other's arms, some laughing aloud. One woman drops to her knees and weeps, hands folded like she's in church. A boy beside her says softly, "America," like it's a prayer. You say nothing. It doesn't feel real enough for words. The wind lifts your hair and tugs at your sleeves. It smells different now. Still sea, but mixed with soil, with trees maybe. You imagine things. Leaves, smoke from chimneys, fresh bread rising in ovens, people walking on dry ground. Somebody behind you says it might still be 2 days, that the harbour's crowded and the ship might have to wait. Someone else says Ellis Island is full, that they'll turn people away, that you'll be sent back. The rumours flit like sparrows, sharp and quick, always half believed. But your gaze stays fixed on the line of land in the distance. It's not close yet, not even near. But it's there. The baby behind you starts to wail. The mother rocks it gently, murmuring lullabies that sound like wind over gravel. You don't turn, you don't move. The ache in your back, in your feet, the chafing at your hips from clothes too long worn without washing. All of it softens now. You think about the streets you've dreamed of, the wide ones, with shops, with food behind glass, clean and warm. You think about the people you'll find again, the boy from your village who wrote letters with stories of factories and pocket watches and Sunday dinners. You wonder if he'll meet you, if he's still in Brooklyn. You hear your stomach growl. It's still hours until food, but that hunger feels different now. Less like pain, more like waiting. Some of the older men are talking in clusters now, arguing over who gets off first, how long the inspections will take, what diseases the officials will look for. One of them swears he knows a trick. Bite your lips so they stay red, walk with a limp to look pitiful, but not too pitiful. Everyone listens, but no one really knows. A girl your age hums next to you, a tune you don't recognise, soft but steady. Her eyes shine. You don't speak, but you both keep watching. The land grows slowly, inch by inch. You can start to see more now. Buildings, maybe. A long shoreline that looks both endless and small. A gull cries above and dives toward the water. Someone says, "Statue," and everyone strains to see it, though it's not visible yet. You stay on the deck until your fingers are stiff and your feet numb from standing. Still, you do not want to go below, not yet, because the smell is stronger now, not the stench of bodies and bucket slop, though that lingers on your clothes. But beyond that, carried on the wind, stretched thin across the sea, the smell of land, of arrival. You breathe in slowly, let it fill your lungs. It doesn't feel like safety yet, but it feels like something real. You can't see much at first. The windows are small, high up and dirty, the light filtering through them in filmy shafts that make the dust sparkle. It's morning, you think, but the whole room seems tinged with a yellow-grey haze like old paper. You're in one of many lines now, lines that snake and loop and stall so often, you begin to wonder if anyone is really moving at all. Your legs are tired already, even though you just stepped off the boat yesterday. Or was it today? The hours blur together here. Everything smells dry and strange, like chalk and old sweat, and something sharp that makes your eyes sting. Disinfectant, someone said. You don't know the word, but you've seen men walking around with metal sprayers, misting the corners of the walls. Your boots scuff against the floor, echoing faintly in the vast, high-ceilinged hall. The ground is worn dull from countless soles before yours. Every few steps, your foot catches on a crack or ridge. You remember your mother whispering to keep your spine straight, no matter how long the wait. If they think you're weak, she said, they might send you back. You don't want to go back. Everywhere around you is a low murmur, different languages rising like waves, some smooth, others guttural, others sing-song and quick. You catch only fragments. A woman whispering a prayer in Russian, a man shouting something harsh in German, children humming, coughing, whimpering. Some speak English, though not many. You try the words in your head. Yes, no, thank you. But they feel strange on your tongue, half-formed and slippery. The line jerks forward again. Ahead, through a wide archway, you see the next station. A row of benches. A doctor in a thin white coat. He doesn't look at the people, not really. He scans them, eyes sharp and quick like a hawk circling. He runs a button hook under a girl's eyelid. Her hands tremble as she blinks back pain. The man next to her is told to lift his shirt and turn. His ribs stick out like wooden slats. The doctor frowns, jots something in chalk on the shoulder of his coat. You knew about the chalk. If they mark you, someone said on the ship, you're not staying. Your stomach tightens. The woman ahead of you has a toddler clinging to her skirt. He's sticky with mucus and won't stop crying. One of the men with the uniform tries to calm her down, but she doesn't understand him. He gestures to her chest, then to the child. She nods, hesitantly, and lifts the boy into her arms. The line moves again. You wipe your palms on your skirt. It's still damp from the boat and the fabric smells like mildew and seawater. A fly buzzes near your face, settles on your cheek, then darts away when you swat it. You're cold in your dress, but sweat gathers at your back and under your arms. The air in here isn't hot exactly. It's just thick, like you're breathing through wet cotton. When your turn comes, the doctor doesn't smile. None of them do. He gestures fast, hardly looking at you. You shuffle forward, trying not to limp. Your ankle's still sore from where someone stepped on it in the crowd yesterday. You lift your chin, like your mother said. He squints at your face, shines a light in your eyes, presses a thumb hard against your cheekbone. Then, the most dreaded part, the hook. So small, so thin, and yet it sends a sharp stab up into your skull as he slides it under your eyelid, checking for trachoma. You flinch. He sighs, but he doesn't chalk you. Not yet. You're waved to the next room. Here, the smell shifts. Less of bodies, more of paper and ink. There are benches, but not enough to sit. People crouch on their heels. Others lean against the walls. You see wide eyes, red-rimmed from lack of sleep. A man with a feathered hat clutches a folded piece of paper to his chest like it's the only thing keeping him upright. More waiting. You're not sure what you're waiting for this time. Some people are being asked questions. There are women with dark coats sitting behind desks, raising their voices to be heard. An interpreter walks past, speaking rapid Polish one moment, then Yiddish the next. You wonder what he dreams in. When they finally call you forward, your knees crack as you stand. A young man with a tight collar and too slick hair asks your name. You say it. He writes something down, then asks another, "Where are you from? Who are you meeting? Do you have money?" You answer, stumbling through some. Others you don't understand, and he sighs, impatient. He calls the interpreter over. Now the questions come again, this time in your words. They're simple, but your answers feel huge. You tell them your uncle works in a factory. You tell them you're 16. You tell them you're healthy. You do not tell them about the tooth that aches when you chew. or how your sister coughed blood into her kerchief before the ship arrived. She's not here anymore. She couldn't walk when it was time to disembark. You had to let go of her hand. You pass somehow. You're one of the lucky ones, someone whispers. The ones who fail, they go to the other door. You haven't seen anyone come back from that one. After the desk, there are more waiting rooms. Another line for final clearance. Another hard bench. You eat the last bit of bread from your coat pocket, dry, with lint on it. Still, you chew slowly, grateful for something familiar. Your mouth is dry, but there's no water offered, and you don't dare ask. A boy near you is trying to sleep. He's curled up on the floor using a satchel as a pillow. His sister fans him with a folded paper. Their mother stares straight ahead, as if looking beyond the stones and the walls and the waiting, all the way to a place with tall windows and real beds and plates that aren't tin. You close your eyes for a moment. You think of orchards, your grandmother's honey, the way the air back home would smell in spring, wet earth, clean laundry, horses. Here the air smells like ink and nervous sweat. But beyond this, beyond the gates and guards and windows smeared with salt, is a city. A city with lights that stay on after dark and machines that make bread rise bigger than your fist. A place where your name, even if it's spelled wrong now, might still open a door. If someone says your name, you stand, your future such as it is has just begun. You step down from the ferry ramp, feet stiff and clumsy from so many days at sea. The planks under you are solid now, not like the pitching, groaning boards of the ship, but the motion stays with you. The world still rocks gently, even though it doesn't. You grip your bag tighter, that worn bundle of fabric and twine that holds everything you own, and take your first real breath of this new place. The air smells wrong, different. Briny, yes, like the sea, but also like smoke and coal dust, and the sharp, metallic tang of so many things hard to name. The breeze carries it all. Bakeries baking, horses sweating, sewage rotting somewhere under the streets. It's all layered together in a thick, invisible fog, warm against your face, gritting between your teeth. People push past you, fast-moving people, men in dark suits with stiff collars, women in narrow hats and gloves, children shouting in English. Everyone seems to know where they're going, except you. You step to the side to drop your bag and rest your arms for a moment. Your hand is sore from clutching it. The fabric's rubbed raw where you've gripped it for days. You stretch your fingers and look up. Buildings. So many buildings. Taller than you've ever seen. Not squat stone houses like back home, but rows and rows that stretch toward the sky. Brick stacked on brick. Narrow windows peering down like curious eyes. Streetcars rattle along iron tracks below cables strung overhead like spider silk. There are signs everywhere, words you can't always read, but colours and letters that shout loud across storefronts. Gold, loans, laundry, ale. Your feet are heavy, and your shoes, the same ones you wore on the ship, squish slightly as you walk. Still damp, still stiff with salt. You keep walking. There are wagons everywhere, pulled by horses with sunken flanks, their hooves striking the cobbles like iron hammers. You flinch each time one passes close. The wheels tower as tall as your waist, and the smell of manure trails in their wake. They're shouting too, not just English, but voices rising in Polish, German, Italian, Yiddish, Russian. They clang together in the streets like plates in a wash basin, none of them making sense, all of them somehow familiar. You catch someone offering bread from a cart, thick loaves, not fresh, but warm. The smell reaches you, and your stomach tightens at the memory of salt biscuits and old oats. You press your hand to your belly and move on. You don't know if it costs money. You don't know how much. The ground is uneven. Stone in some places, dirt in others, and always something slick underfoot. Oil maybe, or spit, or rainwater backed up from the gutters. You glance down each alley you pass. Some are shuttered, dark and narrow as the corridors on the ship. Others hum with sound. Tin pans clatter. Women hang wet clothes on lines that stretch between buildings like ribbons, and children run barefoot, their cries echoing like gulls. You search for the place your cousin told you about. Where to go first? Who might offer space to sleep? The street names are not the ones you memorised. The map you clutched in your pocket on board. It's crumpled now, edges worn, the ink smudged. You pause on a corner and try to ask someone, but he brushes past you in silver-buttoned uniform, eyes blank, not unkind, just distracted. A second man answers, but you don't know the words he uses. You find a quieter street, narrower, with smaller windows and clotheslines swaying gently above. A woman leans from a second-story window and yells something to a boy below. The boy laughs and darts away, dodging a splash of water thrown after him. You reach a stoop and lower yourself slowly, knees aching from standing too long. The stone is rough beneath your skirt, but solid, still. The kind of stillness you haven't felt in weeks. You unwrap the cloth from your bread. The heel you saved from the ship, dry and hard as wood now. You chew slowly, even though it scrapes the roof of your mouth. You're not wasting it. This might be all for today, might be until tomorrow. Your tongue runs along the inside of your cheek, tasting the grit of salt still clinging there. All around, more newcomers like you wander with dazed eyes and heavy footsteps. Some speak under their breath to companions. Others scan doorways for names, symbols, whatever guidance they can find. Many carry the same look, that mix of exhaustion and hope, blankness tinged with fragile belief. You wonder what they see when they look at you. Do you still look like the girl who left home? Or someone else now, worn thinner but maybe stronger too? You stand again. You'll find the address. You'll find someone who understands your words or close enough. You'll knock on a door that'll open, or maybe it won't. Maybe you'll sleep on a stairwell tonight, using your bundle as a pillow. But that's all right. You've slept worse. You've already survived worse. A bell rings somewhere in the distance, sharp and clear, bouncing off the bricks and glass. Another bell answers in the other direction. Church bells, you think, or a factory. You don't know the rhythms yet. You will, with time. You'll learn what noise means morning and which means work. You'll learn the smell of bread that can be bought and which windows to stay away from when they're dark near sundown. You keep walking. The sun is higher now, and the city glows gold on the windows. Someone opens a bakery door and warm air escapes, thick with yeast and sugar. You breathe in deeply. You imagine what it will taste like someday. Not just yet, but someday. When you've earned your place here. When you've built something of your own. A shop maybe. Or a room with clean bedding. A bed with a real sheet instead of worn wool and rope. You picture it for a moment. A room with a window that opens, a window where you can sit and see people walking past. You picture yourself in it, writing a letter home, telling them you made it, telling them it's strange, so strange, but you're not afraid. Not anymore. You walk on. The smell of smoke and sugar fades behind you. Ahead, the shadows deepen between buildings. A cat darts across the street. A baby cries from somewhere above. Your feet are sore, blistered, but you walk anyway. You keep walking, because there's a life out there, waiting to begin, and it starts with this next step. You keep your shoulders tight, just like the women around you, as you step into the thick, pulsing tide of the city. Every direction seems to pull you. Voices shouting, wagon wheels clattering, metal tracks humming beneath horse-drawn streetcars. You've never seen a place move like this. It feels like the whole city is in motion, like the streets themselves are alive. You try to follow the flow, but it's dizzying. Tall buildings rise on either side of you, impossibly high. Their bricks are dark with soot near the base, but climb high enough and some catch the sun. You stare long enough to make your neck ache. In your village, Nothing stood taller than the chapel bell tower. Here, buildings stack above buildings, and iron crisscrosses like spider webs. You see workers up there, tiny as dolls, hammering, shouting, hanging from beams with nothing but the air below them. It makes your stomach tighten. Your boots, cracked and too tight, catch on the uneven paving stones, and someone brushes past you, muttering without looking back. You don't know what they said. English, maybe, or something else entirely. The city is its own language. The clatter of hooves, the clang of the trolley bell, the hiss of steam from somewhere underground. You pause near a corner, overwhelmed. A boy your age pushes a cart past you, stacked with pale rolls and hunks of cheese. He yells out prices in a sing-song rhythm, the same tone used in markets back home, though the words are strange. The air smells of yeast and oil and something sour. Fermentation, perhaps, or garbage, or both. Your stomach twists, empty again. You unwrap your last bit of bread, now hard as wood, and nibble off a corner. You think of the bakery your uncle mentioned in his letter. On Mulberry, he wrote, though you still don't know where that is. You ask a passerby, but they don't stop. Too busy. Everyone is too busy. The whole city is in a rush, and no one has time for someone who walks slowly, speaks carefully, and stares too much. You press on. You pass a man selling roasted chestnuts from a metal drum. The smell is thick and warm and earthy. A woman near him sells matches, just matches, with her child asleep against her chest. You wonder how long they've been standing there. The baby's face is smudged with soot. There are signs everywhere, painted on wood, hammered into walls hanging from iron hooks, names of shops, prices, warnings, some in English, some in letters you don't recognise. You try to sound them out under your breath, your tongue clumsy around the unfamiliar words. You read rooms to let and wonder if they mean beds. You read workers wanted and wonder if you're strong enough. You read no foreigners and understand that one perfectly. The sun shifts, bouncing off windows and casting long, sharp shadows across the lane. You pass beneath an elevated train track, the metal above your head groaning and creaking as a car rumbles by. Dust drifts down, speckling your hair and shoulders. You hear a woman cough behind you, the same deep, rattling sound your cousin had before she died. You pull your shawl tighter. A boy on a stoop calls something. You turn, startled, but he's just shouting at someone across the street. Children play between the wagons, darting past horses and crates piled high. One girl trips and cuts her knee, but she gets up fast, too used to falling to cry. She reminds you of your little sister, and for a moment your heart aches so hard it's hard to keep walking. You come to a square, wide and noisy, crowded with stalls and people. The ground is sticky with fruit peels and streaked with what must be spilled milk. You watch a woman scoop beans from a canvas sack, her hands fast and practised. A bearded man sharpens knives on a spinning stone, the metal whining in rhythm. The language here changes again. You hear snatches of Italian, maybe Polish or Yiddish, all mingling into a music that rises and falls with the rattle of cartwheels and the stomp of boots. A policeman stands nearby, stiff and heavy in his uniform. People glance at him but keep their distance. So do you. Your feet hurt but you don't stop. You walk past a butcher's shop where lambs hang upside down in the window, their eyes closed like sleeping children. The smell is sharp, blood and sawdust and salt. A cat lingers near the door, its eyes keen, tail twitching. The streets twist like vines, some narrow, some wide and always full of sound. Somewhere a church bell rings, clear and slow. You look up and realise you've been walking for hours. Your skin itches beneath your layers. Your underclothes are still damp from sweat and seawater. You haven't bathed since the ship. You pass a row of tenement buildings. Tall, narrow places with laundry strung like flags between the windows. Shirts and underthings flutter in the breeze, brushing against brick. The smell down this street is heavier. Coal smoke, urine, damp plaster. You cover your nose without thinking. You hear a baby screaming behind one of those open windows. A dog barks back. Somewhere, someone is singing. Not well, but loud, as if trying to drown out all the other noise. You begin to wonder how many people live in just one of those buildings. How many rooms? How many beds? Do they all eat together? Or do they cook over little stoves in corners and climb shaky stairs to sleep six in a room? A girl your age leans against the doorway of one of the buildings. She chews something, maybe licorice, and watches the street like someone older. Her dress is patched but clean. She sees you and doesn't smile, but doesn't turn away either. You nod once, unsure if it's allowed. She nods back. You feel it again. That split inside you. One part wanting to run back to the sea, to the ship, to the past where your name still sounded right. The other part aching to belong here, to find your uncle, to find your place, to understand the rhythm of this strange, enormous new world. The sun dips lower, turning the street into gold and shadow. You find a spot on a stoop and sit, careful not to block the doorway. Your back is sore, your hands are gritty from touching walls and rails and coins. You close your eyes for just a minute. The city rumbles on, endless and unknowable. You remind yourself that you're here, you made it, and you are not leaving. You're still getting used to the way the hallway bends. Up 3 flights from the street, and every stair groans with the weight of your boots and the secrets of the tenants above and below. The railing is worn smooth from hands like yours, tired, raw, searching for balance. A child's toy lies forgotten on the second step. You sidestep it, brushing past the neighbour's laundry hung out to dry over the stairwell, damp and dripping onto your shoulder. You push open the door with your hip. Your hands are full with a sack of potatoes and a bundle of kindling, and feel the immediate shift in air. Inside it is warm but close, thick. The windows barely open, and even when they do, the soot from the street below finds its way in. You smell onions frying 2 floors down, a trace of fish from the widow next door, and cabbage, always cabbage, lingering like a second skin. Your nose has stopped protesting. You smell it, but it no longer surprises you. It just is. Your room is no more than a box, barely the width of your arm span. The walls are thin, paper thin, thinner than that. You hear the soft rhythm of a lullaby being sung in Yiddish just behind your bed frame. On the other side, someone coughs, a man, wet and deep, as though something inside him has broken loose and won't settle. It keeps you up at night. There are 5 of you in this room. Your sister and her baby sleep on the mattress below the window. You sleep along the floorboards, sharing a blanket with your cousin, head to toe. There's a bucket in the corner. You do your best not to think about it. The floorboards creak as you walk across them, the kind of creak that stays in the bones of the building. You can feel the neighbours moving about above, the muted thud of boots dropping by the bed, water sloshing in a pail. You lower the potatoes gently in the corner near the stove, though the stove hasn't had fuel for 2 nights. The last fire was made from a chopped-up orange crate you found near the alley. It burned fast and left the cabbage only half softened, but the steam and warmth stayed long enough to make the baby stop crying. There's grime on your hands, the kind that doesn't scrub off. You bend to the wash basin, filled this morning with water hauled from the spigot in the alley. The chill remains. You dip your hands in, teeth tightening, and rub them raw with a sliver of soap. The water goes cloudy with dust and ash. You wipe your face with a damp kerchief. It's better than nothing. The toilet is down the hall, shared by all 4 apartments on the floor. Sometimes you hold it till morning, not wanting to make the walk past the men with their cards and their smokes and their stares. When you do go, you bring the oil lamp, careful not to trip on the warped boards. The stench inside the latrine is enough to make your eyes water. You hold your breath, again and again. Tonight's dinner is boiled potatoes. You cut them with the same knife you use for mending soles. No butter, but salt. Just a little. You chew slowly, jaw tired, but grateful. The baby smacks her lips, and you hand over your last cube. It's soft anyway. You'll get by. The table wobbles. Its legs are uneven, one propped up with folded newspaper. You can still read some of the headlines. Strikes at the garment factory, a speech by a man who says workers deserve Saturdays off. You wonder what that would feel like, a day with nothing to sew or scrub. You take your sewing to the bed, the patchwork pile of coats and pants brought home from the factory. Piecework, 5 cents a garment, only if it's done clean and tight, no loose threads, no mistakes. The needle pricks your finger often, and you no longer cry out. You just press the cloth tighter and keep going. A fly buzzes near your ear. You swat it. Miss it lands on the rim of the water glass. You think about pouring that water over your hands again, but it's the last of it, and you'll need to drink something before sleep. So you wait. You swat again when it lifts. The sounds of the building merge like a slow, breathing body. Footsteps on the roof where some boys play marbles. A lull in conversation that gives way to laughter in Polish, then Yiddish. A baby squealing, not yours this time. Somewhere a violin. Just a few notes, hesitant and soft. You hold the needle still to listen, and for a moment the noise becomes music. The ceiling above drips slightly when it rains, and tonight the dark spots are spreading. You shuffle your bedding to the far wall, away from the leak. Not that it matters much. The blanket is thin, not enough to keep out the chill. Still, you press it close around your shoulders and pull your coat over your knees. You think about home, about the sun in the fields of your village, open air and long grass and the way bread smelled when your mother baked it in the outdoor oven. You think about quiet mornings and stone wells and cousins who never left. They are married now, some with children. You wonder what they'd say about this place. A siren blares outside. A fire? A police wagon? You don't look through the window. It only makes you feel more closed in. Brick upon brick, building upon building. Laundry lines stretched like webbing from one wall to another. The sky is a narrow slice of grey. Your sister has fallen asleep, the baby curled against her like a kitten. You feel the ache behind your eyes again. Not tears, just tiredness. That kind of tired that seeps into your bones and settles. Tomorrow you'll get up early. Carry the bundle of coats to the factory. Fingers raw from cold and work, stomach still aching from hunger. You'll wait in line behind the other girls, clock in, and bend over the machine for 10 hours. Maybe more. You'll forget to blink, to drink, to stretch. But for now, you let the sounds of the tenement wrap around you like a second skin. The patter of shoes, the click of a lock, the soft rustle of sheets, the creak of stairs in the dark. You close your eyes. Somewhere, not far, someone is singing. A lullaby you almost remember, and you dream of wider rooms, soft beds, warm baths. Not yet, but someday. Someday. The whistle blows, long and sharp, echoing off walls that sweat with the heat of machines. It's still dark outside. Of course it is. You haven't seen the sun fully rise since you started working here. You pull the heavy wooden door open and step inside the factory, the smell rushing to meet you like an old enemy. It's a cocktail of oil, damp fabric, hot metal, and sweat that lives in your nose now. It clings to your skin just as much as your own shirt does. That same shirt you've tried to wash at night in the kitchen basin, scrubbing with a sliver of hard soap and cold water, but there's no scrubbing out the factory stink anymore. Your fingers already ache, though your shift has just begun. They crack at the edges. The skin splits, tiny red lines that sting when the cotton dust settles into them. You've taken to wrapping scraps of cloth around your fingertips, but they don't last long. Some of the other girls tie bits of string at the base of their nails, trying anything to hold their fingers together one more day. The machines are already clattering, loud and angry, like they resent being woken to. Rows upon rows, humming and groaning, pressing and stitching and snapping. You find your seat, the third one from the end, near the window that doesn't open, and slide onto your stool. It wobbles. It always has. You think they won't fix it just to see if you'll fall. The floor's wet again. Greasy from oil or someone spilled tea or something worse. You tuck your hem up and steady your foot on the pedal. You hope it doesn't slip. The girl last week caught her hand in the gears when the floor was slick and her boot skidded. She didn't come back. You wear no gloves. No one does. They slow you down, and slow means less money. You need every cent. Thread the needle. Start the line. Pull, press, press, press. The rhythm becomes you. And in that rhythm, time disappears. Sometimes you whisper to yourself beneath the din, a song from home maybe, or your own name, just to remember it, just to remind yourself there's a you under all this. Every few hours someone comes by with a tray of water, tin cups dunked one after the other. The water tastes of rust and old pipes, but you drink. You have to. The air dries your throat, and the lint, always lint, soft and sharp at once, floats in invisible clouds. You can feel it nestling into your lungs. The floor manager roams like a hungry cat, his footsteps soft despite the boots. He watches for idle hands, bent backs, tired eyes. If your pace slows, he'll be there. He never yells, just looks. That look makes you faster than shouts ever could. Lunch is no joy, only pause. You sit on the steps outside near the alley, where the walls sweat just as much as inside. You pull your wax paper bundle from your apron, a chunk of yesterday's bread, and a slice of something that used to be cheese, dry, crumbling. The bread's gone hard at the edges. Still, you eat it slowly, pretending it's more. No tea today. You're out of leaves, and even if you had them, the milk's gone sour. You sip from a jar of water you filled that morning, hoping it doesn't taste like the pipes again. A girl beside you smokes a rolled leaf, and the smell is almost sweet. She offers you one, but you shake your head. You've only 2 pennies left, and they're for tomorrow's supper, or part of it anyway. Back inside, the air is thicker. The machines never stop, not really. Hands replace hands at the end of shifts, and the clatter goes on. You've learned to listen for trouble in the hum. A thread jammed, a bobbin loose, a belt slipping. You pause to fix yours and get scolded for slowing production. You apologise. You always do. Better that than being let go. Your shoulders scream by late afternoon. The bones grind in a way they didn't before New York. Your neck stiffens from the hunch. You've heard of women who stoop even when they walk outside, their backs frozen in factory posture. You wonder if that'll happen to you. Sometimes the girl next to you hums and you're grateful for it. She's from Poland, older than you, with eyes like river stones. You don't know all the words, but it doesn't matter. The sound is enough to remind you, this is temporary. It has to be. The windows grow dark and still the whistle does not blow. Someone drops a spool. It rolls under the steam press. No one fetches it. It's not worth the risk. Finally it comes. The long breath of metal and steam that signals the end. You lean back just for a moment, then rise slowly. Your knees crack. Your palms are damp. You grab your shawl, stale with sweat, and sling it around your shoulders. Outside, it is night. The street lamps flicker with gaslight, and the air feels cooler, almost clean. You breathe it in, careful not to cough. Your boots slap the pavement as you walk. Each step felt deep in your legs, heavy and sore. You pass other workers, faces like yours, hollow-eyed, hunched, quiet. No one talks much on the way back. Words are for better hours. When you reach your building, children are still playing in the stairwell. Their laughter is sharp, too loud for your tired ears, and yet welcome. Life. Still going. You nod at a neighbour, who nods back with the same slow weariness. You climb the 4 flights, your hands tracing the same rail others have gripped for decades. Inside the apartment, it is hot and close. A candle flickers on the table, and the air smells of onions and coal smoke. Someone's washing at the basin. Your bed is a folded cot in the corner, and you can already feel how tight your muscles will cramp when you try to sleep. But first, you rinse your hands. The water is grey by the time it runs off. You pick at the bits of thread still clinging to your sleeves. There is no supper tonight. Not really. Maybe a slice of potato in broth. Maybe less. You chew slowly, not because you wish to savour it, but because chewing makes it feel like more. The sounds of the city outside are a strange lullaby. Horses clopping past, a cart's squeaky wheel, a baby crying 2 rooms over. You pull the blanket over your shoulders, thin as it is, and curl on your side. Your hands throb, your back aches. But you are here. You survived the sea, you survived the factory today, and tomorrow you'll do it again. It takes most of a day just to get to the edge of the city. You ride in a train packed with people in travel-worn coats, boxes tied with twine, crates that creak with chickens or rattling tools. The air inside the carriage is thick, warm with breaths and sour with travel and wool and the greasy scent of cold meat from someone's meal unwrapped a few seats over. A child beside you has been coughing for half the ride, and the baby across the aisle wails until its mother presses something soaked in spirits to its lips. You press your forehead to the glass and watch the city fall away. It's strange at first, how quickly the buildings flatten, how the noise seems to drain from your ears. The tracks hum beneath your feet. There are trees, then more trees, then nothing but fields. Your breath fogs the window as you lean closer, trying to see beyond the weedy ditches and the scattered fences held together by rust and wind. Hours pass like mist, grey and slow. You nap sitting up, your cheek pressed to your bundle, your body aching from the factory work still lingering in your shoulders. When you wake, the sun is lower, pale gold across the land. No mountains on the horizon, just more sky than you ever thought possible. It stretches out in every direction, soft and enormous. Someone calls it freedom. You think it looks like loneliness. The train lets you off at a wooden platform that barely belongs to a station. A single building with a slanting roof and a sign you can't read clearly in the dimming light. There's no one waiting, just gravel under your boots and a wind that smells like hay and dust. Your breath turns visible in the cooling air. Someone points you toward a wagon that will take you farther, west, always west. You ride beside a man who speaks broken English and smokes something sharp-smelling from a hand-rolled paper. His beard is grey and wiry, and he tells you he came 5 years ago from a village smaller than your own. You nod politely, even when you don't understand him. It feels better not to be alone. The wagon bumps along a rough dirt road. Sometimes it isn't a road at all, just tracks between tall grass or packed lines through forest shadows. Your fingers grip the bench as the wheels jolt over stones. The sun slips lower and everything turns the colour of old brass. You pass homesteads, barely more than shacks really. Weathered wood, a stovepipe smoking thinly, chickens scratching in the dirt. At one, you see a woman bent over a wash basin outside, her hands red from scrubbing. At another, a boy chases after a pig with a stick, his laughter swallowed by the wind. You wonder if you'll laugh like that again, or if every day will be as hard as the one before it. That night you sleep in a bunkhouse, if you can call it that. A single room with boards nailed loosely together, and a stove in the centre that smokes whenever someone opens the door. There are 12 of you, sprawled across hay mattresses or folded blankets. Mice scratch in the corners. The air carries the scent of sweat, wet boots, and kerosene. You keep your bag close. There's not much in it. Just your extra shift, a brush, and the small tin of harder bread you saved from the city. You nibble a piece before bed, more out of habit than hunger. It tastes like chalk and memory. The wind howls through the cracks in the boards. Someone snores. Someone else mutters in their sleep. You dream of open air. The morning begins before light. A bell clangs outside and you rise stiff and cold, wrapping the shawl tighter over your shoulders. Your breath clouds in front of you as you step out into the dawn. The fields shimmer with frost. There is coffee of a sort, bitter and weak, poured into a tin cup you can barely hold because it burns and warms at the same time. Breakfast is coarse cornmeal mush, ladled from a single pot. It sticks to your ribs and does nothing for the chill in your fingers. You're given a sack of seed and a long-handled hoe. No one tells you what to do, but you follow the others, watching for cues. You walk past the edge of the fence, past the rutted trail, into a vast square of land that belongs to no one yet. The soil is hard, clumped with last year's roots. You get to work. The hoe bites into the earth. Again. You sweat beneath layers even though the air is still cold. Dirt clings to your skirts, to your boots, to your hands. Your back begins to ache. You keep going. There's no one to take your place. The sun climbs and lifts the frost. The land seems endless when you're standing in it, as if the sky and the ground are stitched together at the edges of your vision. You lose track of time. You lose track of where you are, but you keep digging. At midday there's bread. Fresh, if hard, and a chunk of salt pork too strong for your stomach. You eat anyway, sitting on the turned earth with your legs stretched out before you. It's quiet, no car horns, no factory whistles, just the breeze stirring across the plain and the occasional lowing of a cow from some distant barn. The afternoon brings more work. When your arms begin to throb and your knuckles split from gripping the handle too tight, you stop and soak them in cold water from a barrel. They sting, then go numb. You don't know yet if this land will be yours someday. You've heard whispers about claims and deeds and 5-year requirements, about proving your worth with calloused hands and stubbornness. You don't understand all the rules, but you know this much. No one will give you anything. You have to take it, make it, grow it. As the sun begins to fall again, you return to the bunkhouse. You wash your hands in a tin basin, praying the water isn't frozen. Dinner is stew, thin, mostly potato, spiced with black pepper and salt that crunches between your teeth. You eat by lantern light, knees drawn up, grateful for warmth, for food, for a roof. Someone passes around a harmonica. Someone else sings a lullaby in a language you don't speak but recognize in your bones. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you'll go farther west, perhaps to land of your own, perhaps not. But the air out here, this wide, crisp wind, it tastes of something different. Not easier, but cleaner, truer. It carries no soot, no steps overhead, no cough echoing down tenement walls, just silence and the space to make your own noise, or none at all. Your hands are already sore before the sun rises. You can feel it in your knuckles as you stir beneath the rough wool blanket. The fabric scratches your skin, and the hay-stuffed mattress underneath is lumpy and damp in places where the night air seeped through the chinks in the cabin wall. The room is dark, but you know the shape of everything by now. The small wooden crate where you keep your needle and thread, the chipped enamel basin, the iron stove still cold from the night. There's no need to see the rooster to hear him. He's loud, persistent, and the first to rise every day. You swing your legs over the edge and your bare feet meet the dirt-packed floor. It's cold. Not the sharp, clean chill of a city morning, but something heavier. A deep, settling cold that clings to the earth and your bones. You dress quickly, pulling on your coarse shift, the woolen skirt patched at the hem, and your boots, still crusted with mud from days before. When you step outside, the wind bites your cheeks and cuts through the sleeves of your blouse. even though the sky hasn't yet turned grey. The fields stretch out before you, low and heavy under morning mist. The soil is thick and cold under your nails as you begin to work. You rake the earth with a dull hoe, breaking up the clumps, coaxing life from ground that doesn't give it willingly. The smell of the land is familiar: wet dirt, manure, old straw, and something faintly metallic. You don't question it, you just keep moving. Your breath comes out in white puffs, and when you wipe your nose on your sleeve, your fingers leave long smudges of the earth across the fabric. The frost lingers on the edges of the cabbage leaves and over the top of the water bucket near the well. You crack the ice with the back of the ladle, and the water tastes of wood and iron as you drink. It's cold enough to hurt your teeth, but you drink it anyway. There's no sugar here, no fresh milk, just water, boiled potatoes, and sometimes, when you're lucky, a piece of salted meat no bigger than your palm. You work until the sun begins to climb. By then, your back aches from stooping, and your hands are stiff and red with cold. Blisters are forming, again, between your thumb and forefinger, just where the hoe's rough handle rubs. You don't stop. Everyone works, even the children when they can. It's the only way to keep the farm running. Inside, the kitchen is warm with the smell of bread. Flat, heavy loaves made from flour and water and a bit of sour starter. You chew it slowly, savagely, even though it's dry as bark. It sticks to your teeth, but it fills your belly, and that's all that matters. There's coffee too, if you stretch the grounds far enough. It's bitter and thin, brewed in a dented tin pot with a ragged cloth strainer. You drink it in small sips, holding the mug in both hands so the heat seeps into your fingertips. When the sun is high and its warmth finally reaches your shoulders, you go back outside. There are fences to mend, chickens to feed, and firewood to stack. The goats need milking, their sour bodies pressing against you as you try not to spill a precious drop. The milk smells strong, tangy, almost grassy, and your fingers cramp as you squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. You think of the city sometimes, of the clatter of trams, the smell of bread from a real bakery, the slap of your shoes on cobbled streets. Here, it's only dirt, in your boots, under your nails, caught in your eyelashes. You wash when you can, with water that's always cold and soap that stings because it's made with old lard and ash. Your scalp itches from the sweat and the straw. Your dress never really dries, no matter how long you hang it by the stove. And still, you wear it again the next day. Sometimes you look out across the fields and see another figure working, Mr. Dobrev from the next farm over. He waves. You wave back. Or you don't. It doesn't matter. There's dust between you and time enough to keep your heads down. You hear occasional voices, your uncle's muttering to himself while fixing the plough, your cousin's laughter when a chicken escapes the pen and runs straight into a barrel. You eat again around sunset. A stew, maybe, if there was time to boil the bones from last week's goat. Potatoes, again. Maybe cabbage. The stew is greasy and thin, but hot. You eat crowded around the small table, elbows nearly touching, the wood worn smooth where so many hands have rested. There's little talk. Words waste energy you don't have. Instead, you chew. You listen to the steady clink of spoons against bowls, to the wind pushing against the window panes. When it's dark, you pull off your boots. You feel the raw skin on your heels and the itch of mosquito bites under your hem. You stretch out on the hay mattress again and pull the wool blanket up to your chin. There's no lamp tonight. The oil ran low, only the fire's glow in its last embers, painting flickers onto the wall. You close your eyes and try not to think about your old home, where it was noisy, yes, and crowded, but familiar, where you knew the shape of every alley, the sound of every bell. Here, the quiet sometimes rings louder than the noise ever did, but still, you sleep. You have to, because tomorrow you will do it all again, and the day after that, and maybe someday, if you work hard enough, dig deep enough, Endure just a little longer. This farm might be yours, a place of your own, and that thought keeps your hands moving, even when they blister. You stand at the edge of a field as the sun dips low, casting gold over furrowed rows and the backs of tired workers. Your fingers are wrapped around the same wooden hoe you've held most days since stepping off the wagon, splinters buried beneath calluses now too thick to feel. A breeze picks up from the nearby trees, warm and musky with summer weeds and the faint tang of livestock. You breathe it in, chest rising slow and heavy. The smell reminds you not of home exactly, but of something steady. That life, no matter how raw, keeps moving forward. You lean on the hoe, shoulders dropping with something close to gratitude. Not because the day was easy. It wasn't. Your arms still ache from lifting sloshing buckets of milk in the dim blue of morning, and your back stiffens from hours bent low to the soil. But because you made it, another day worked, another day survived, and you get to see the sky now. It stretches wide and endless above you, not like the belly of the ship where you once counted breaths between creaks in the boards, wondering if the next wave would tip you into the deep dark. You remember that damp stink, the rattle of people coughing in their sleep, and the hollowness in your belly that never quite went away. Days blurred into nights. The only real light came when they let you topside, and even then through a veil of salt wind and sun that made you dizzy. But that is behind you now. You shift your grip, walk slowly back toward the lean-to where the others are finishing their tasks. The dirt is dry and soft underfoot, clinging to your boots in fine grey powder. You hear someone chopping kindling near the cookpot, a dull, repetitive thud. Someone else tends the fire, and the smell of boiling potatoes reaches you, mingling with smoke and the scent of sweat worked deep into clothes that haven't been washed since last week. You glance down at your skirts, dirt-streaked and nearly stiff with wear. They'll last a while longer yet. The others murmur in low voices, and someone hums a tune you don't know, or maybe you do, but it's changed now, slow and drowsy with fatigue. You sit on a split log, let the hoe fall beside you, and ease off your boots. Your feet pulse with relief, swollen and raw at the heels, the fabric of your stockings stuck to old blisters. You peel them back carefully, wincing. There's no doctor out here, no one to wrap things cleanly, but others help when they can. A woman named Marta once gave you crushed mint leaves to press against the worst of it. She said it helps. You think maybe it did. Supper is passed around. A tin bowl with soft potatoes, a few carrots, and a piece of grey meat floating in broth. It's hot, and your fingers sting as they brush the rim. You blow on the spoon to cool it, watching the steam curl away into the cooling dusk. The taste is plain, thin, but it fills your mouth, slides warm down your throat, and quiets the emptiness inside. Someone jokes that tomorrow the stew might have a chicken foot in it, and you smile just slightly. Most days laughter feels foreign, but it's not unwelcome. After eating, you rinse the bowl with a little water from a barrel, then set it upside down to dry. You wish you could soak in a proper bath, but water is hauled by hand, and it's saved for drinking. Sometimes, when it rains, you strip down and stand beneath the eaves, arms wide, letting the cold wash over you. You miss soap. You miss the feeling of being clean, of linen sheets and warm bread wrapped in cloth. But here, there's something else. You walk to the edge of the clearing before night closes in, the air cooling fast. The forest beyond is dark and deep, filled with the soft hiss of crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl. You tilt your head back and look at the stars. So many of them, more than you ever saw back in the city. You trace the shapes like you used to with your father when you were little. Orion, the Big Dipper. At least, you think that's what they're called. They comfort you somehow, as if the sky you slept under back home still watches over you here. thousands of miles and a lifetime away. You remember the ship's deck on the last night before landfall, how the gulls circled low and the crew grew quiet. The scent of pine had carried on the wind, and someone held your arm whispering, "Almost there." You remember the press of bodies as everyone surged to sea, the faces pale and straining, eyes wide. And then the blur of it, Ellis Island, the shouts, the waiting. So much waiting. The shame of being inspected like livestock, letters chalked on your clothes, the voice that asked questions you didn't have the words to answer. But you made it. You are here. And though the land is hard and your hands blister and the nights are cold, something is growing. Not just in the soil, but in you. A fragile root of something better. You dream sometimes of a place with a porch, a fence, maybe a cow, a child pulling at your apron, asking what's for dinner. You dream of speaking this new language without effort, of writing your name in proud letters, of sending a letter eastward, telling your brother to come, to follow you. You stand there, arms wrapped around your thin blouse for warmth, and you realise you're not the same girl who boarded that ship. You don't flinch when the wind howls. You don't cry when the bread runs out. You've learned how to patch a boot, how to plant a row, how to carve strength out of empty spaces. The others call you back. Night is falling fast and the lanterns are lit. Their glow soft and golden against the rough wooden walls. You step back through shadows, past rows of turned earth and rickety fences, toward where sleep waits, in a straw bed under a worn blanket that smells of smoke and sweat and safety. As you lie down, the ache in your bones hums like a lullaby. The stars wink through cracks in the roof. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you rise again and build a life no storm can take. As our story ends, I want to give you a historical overview of the Great Migration. Part 1. The Great Migration begins, the early 1900s immigration boom. Imagine it's the turn of the 20th century. The year is 1900. Horse-drawn carriages fill cobbled city streets, electric lights are just starting to outshine gas lamps, and the Statue of Liberty stands tall in New York Harbour, welcoming millions with her promise of freedom and opportunity. This is the dawn of what historians often call the Great Wave of Immigration, a time when the United States transformed almost overnight into a bustling mosaic of cultures, languages, and dreams. The numbers behind the movement. Between 1900 and 1915 alone, over 15 million immigrants poured into the United States. By the end of the Great Wave, which spanned from roughly 1880 to 1924, that number had reached over 20 million. To put that into perspective, in 1900 the US population was just about 76 million people. That means nearly 1 in 4 Americans either came from overseas or had a parent who did. These were people fleeing famine, persecution, poverty, or simply looking for a better shot at life. Steamships replaced old sailboats, and what once took weeks now took just 7 to 10 days to cross the Atlantic. The lower cost and faster travel made immigration more accessible to the working class than ever before. Where were they coming from? Unlike earlier waves of immigration, which were largely made up of people from Western Europe, think England, Ireland, Germany and Scandinavia, the early 1900s saw a dramatic shift. The newcomers came from southern and eastern Europe, Italy, especially from the poorer southern regions like Sicily and Calabria, Russia and Eastern Europe, including large numbers of Jews fleeing pogroms and persecution, Poland, Lithuania and Slovakia, often escaping both economic hardship and national oppression under empires, Austria, Hungary, Greece and the Balkans, regions rife with political unrest and poverty. And they didn't just come from Europe. A growing number also came from Asia, particularly China and Japan, though these groups faced heavy immigration restrictions and outright exclusionary laws, like the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was still very much in effect by 1900. The journey, a gruelling passage. Most immigrants travelled in steerage class, the cheapest and most crowded part of the ship, often little more than a dark, poorly ventilated storage area. Conditions were harsh, food was basic, privacy was non-existent, and seasickness was rampant. Disease spread quickly, yet the promise of a new life drove people to endure this floating purgatory. For many, the moment they glimpsed the Statue of Liberty or Ellis Island was the first time hope became real. Arrival. Welcome to Ellis Island. Ellis Island, dubbed the Island of Hope, Island of Tears, processed more than 12 million immigrants between 1892 and 1954, with its busiest years right at the start of the 20th century. Immigrants underwent a battery of inspections. Doctors watched for signs of illness. Anyone who limped, coughed, or looked unwell might be detained or even sent back. There were also mental tests, puzzles and memory games to gauge whether an immigrant could assimilate. One wrong answer could mean deportation, yet most passed. In fact, about 98% of those who arrived made it through. They left Ellis Island with a new lease on life, and often a tag on their coat with the name of a train station or city scribbled on it, guiding them to their next destination. Where did they settle? Most immigrants settled in urban centres, creating tight-knit ethnic neighbourhoods that were like pockets of the old world in the new. Some of the major cities that saw booming immigrant populations included New York City. The Lower East Side teemed with Italian, Jewish and Irish communities. Chicago, Poles, Czechs and Italians filled up entire neighbourhoods. Boston, Irish and Italian immigrants dominated. Philadelphia, Cleveland, Detroit and San Francisco also saw significant growth. These ethnic enclaves, Little Italy, Chinatown, Polish Hill and many others, provided cultural familiarity, support networks and often jobs. But not all stayed in the cities. Railroads carried others out to the Midwest and Great Plains, where they took up farming or worked on building the very tracks that brought them west. What jobs did they do? The jobs available to immigrants were often the ones no one else wanted. Dangerous, gruelling and poorly paid, these roles nonetheless offered a foot in the door to the American dream. Factory work in textiles, steel, meatpacking and garment industries. Construction, digging subways, laying bricks, building bridges, mines and mills, from coal mines in Pennsylvania to ironworks in the Midwest. Domestic servants, particularly for women, working as maids or nannies in wealthier households. Child labour was common. Immigrant children often left school early, if they attended at all, to help support their families. But for many, these jobs were better than what they'd left behind. Culture shock and conflict. The cultural clash was fierce. Many Americans, particularly those from earlier immigration waves, viewed the newcomers with suspicion. They spoke different languages, followed different religions. Many were Catholic, Orthodox, or Jewish rather than Protestant, and were seen as uneducated or even dangerous. This xenophobia gave rise to the nativist movement, which sought to limit immigration and preserve a certain vision of Americanism. Organisations like the Immigration Restriction League pushed hard for literacy tests and quotas. Newspapers and political cartoons of the era often portrayed immigrants as animals, criminals, or disease carriers, and yet, over time, many immigrants did what seemed impossible. They carved out a place for themselves. A new American identity. By the 1910s, these immigrants had laid the foundation for entire industries, revitalised cities, and added countless threads to the fabric of American culture. From food and music to labour rights and language, the influence of early 20th century immigrants is still felt today. Part 2. Life of immigrants in early 1900s America. The moment their feet touched American soil, the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. After weeks at sea, after saying goodbye to everything they knew, millions of immigrants stepped into a whirlwind of hope and hardship. What did life in the New World actually look like for these newcomers? This is the story of how dreams clashed with reality and how resilience forged a new American identity. Most immigrants didn't arrive and move into a white picket fence suburban dream. They landed in the bowels of cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia and Chicago, where factories belched smoke and space was tighter than a sardine tin. In New York's Lower East Side, hundreds of thousands lived in tenement housing. 5- or 6-story buildings crammed with dozens of families. These homes were often windowless, poorly ventilated and dangerously flammable. Bathrooms were shared by dozens of tenants, usually in a hallway or worse out back in a common yard. Kids slept 3 to a bed. In some apartments, boards strung across bathtubs served as makeshift beds at night. Entire families survived in a single room, often with boarders to help pay rent. Despite these harsh conditions, something powerful was beginning to form. Tight-knit immigrant communities bound by shared language, culture, faith, and the determination to make life work in America. If you're a Jewish or Italian immigrant woman in New York, chances are you worked in a garment factory, maybe even a sweatshop in the same building you lived in. These were not places of beauty. They were noisy, hot, and dangerous. Hours were long, 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Men often worked in construction, steel mills or shipyards, lifting beams by hand or toiling underground in coal mines. Wages were low, injuries were common, and workplace protections were practically non-existent. Children weren't spared either. Before child labour laws took hold, kids as young as 8 worked in textile mills, canneries, or as newsboys on the streets, trying to bring home a few extra coins to keep the family afloat. Language barriers were constant and cultural misunderstandings were common. A Polish grandmother might not understand a word of English. A young Irish boy might pick it up in the streets. Over time, kids often became interpreters for their parents, navigating schools, banks, and even landlords. Despite the hardships, immigrant communities found strength in each other. People from the same villages back home clustered together, forming ethnic enclaves that helped them survive. These weren't just neighbourhoods, they were cultural sanctuaries. Little Italies, Greek towns and Jewish quarters emerged in every major city. There were churches, synagogues and mutual aid societies offering spiritual and practical support. If someone was sick, the community helped. If someone was out of work, they passed the hat around. If someone died, they made sure the family didn't go broke burying them. While older generations often remained in manual labour, their children had different dreams. Public schools were packed with young immigrant children, some of whom couldn't speak English at first. Still, they learned quickly. Teachers would Americanize them, sometimes harshly, sometimes kindly, teaching them the Pledge of Allegiance along with reading and writing. Many children grew up caught between two worlds, old country values at home, American slang and style in the streets. But these kids would be the ones to rise, to start businesses, to enter professions their parents could only dream of. It wasn't all opportunity. Immigrants faced deep discrimination, from insults on the street to signs on factories that read, "No Irish need apply," or "Only native English speakers." Italians were accused of being criminals. Jews were accused of controlling finance. Eastern Europeans were branded as anarchists and radicals. Sometimes the hostility turned violent. The 1909 garment workers' strike, known as the Uprising of the 20,000, saw young immigrant women facing police batons to demand better working conditions. But they organised, they fought, they endured. Immigrants didn't just toil in sweatshops and mines, they also hustled and built businesses. Pushcarts lined city streets with pickles, fresh produce or handmade shoes. A Polish butcher on one block, a Chinese laundry on another, a Greek diner down the street. Over time, some of these humble operations grew into large businesses. Many immigrants sent money back home, remittances that supported entire villages in Ireland, Italy and beyond. If America was a melting pot, it simmered in the kitchens of immigrant families. Pasta, bagels, pierogies, schnitzel, challah, gyros and kielbasa, once foreign foods, became American staples. Irish immigrants turned St. Patrick's Day into a national celebration. Jewish delis brought pastrami sandwiches into the mainstream. Italians gave us pizza. The immigrant influence wasn't just economic, it was deeply cultural. Despite the squalor, the hardship and the discrimination, many immigrants began to climb. A child born in a tenement might become a shop owner. A coal miner's son might become a doctor. This upward mobility, though slow and difficult, was very real, and it kept the hope alive. One 1910s Yiddish newspaper captured the mood with a single line. "It is hard to be a Jew in America, but it is even harder to be a Jew anywhere else." The same sentiment echoed across all immigrant groups. America was tough, but it was possible. So what was life like for the immigrants of the early 1900s? It was crowded, chaotic, and often cruel, but also community-driven, courageous, and full of hope. They didn't just survive, they shaped cities, they raised families, they created neighborhoods, and they carved out a place in the American story. Part 3. The Struggle, the Change, and the Legacy. By the time the 1910s rolled into the 1920s, America was changing, and so were its immigrants. The children of newcomers were growing up fast. They spoke English, learned American history in school, and worked their way up from the factory floor to the front office. Some became teachers, clerks, barbers, or salesmen. A few even became lawyers, doctors, and politicians. But while the second generation was rising, the first generation still struggled. There was always tension between the old ways and the new world. In the home, mothers still cooked traditional meals and fathers told stories in their native languages. But outside, their children danced to jazz, wore modern clothes, and spoke a faster English than their parents could follow. The 1920s brought big changes, and not all of them were welcome. After decades of open immigration, America began to shut its doors. Why? Because many native-born Americans began to fear that the country was changing too fast. They worried about jobs, they worried about crime, they worried about losing their culture. In 1924, Congress passed the Immigration Act, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act. This law placed strict quotas on who could enter the country. It favoured immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, like the British, Germans and Scandinavians, and restricted those from Southern and Eastern Europe, like Italians, Poles, Russians, and Jews. Asians were almost completely barred. The Golden Door didn't slam shut completely, but it narrowed sharply. The age of mass immigration was coming to a pause. The people already here would now have to build their lives within new borders, and they did. In the 1930s, when the Great Depression hit, everyone, immigrant and native-born alike, struggled. Jobs vanished, wages dropped, breadlines stretched for blocks. Some immigrants returned to their home countries, but many stayed, digging in even deeper. Even in crisis, immigrant communities remained tight. Mutual aid societies, churches and family networks helped people survive the hard years. When World War II broke out, immigrant sons were called to serve. They fought in Europe and the Pacific in every branch of the military. Some became war heroes, others never came home. But their service helped shift public opinion. Americans began to see immigrant families not as foreigners, but as part of the nation's fabric. After the war, a new era began. Home ownership rose, the suburbs grew, factories turned to peacetime production, and many immigrants, now decades removed from their arrival, became citizens, bought homes, and sent their children to college. But let's go back to something important: the role immigrants played in building the country itself. They built the skyscrapers of New York. Italian and Irish labourers dug the subway tunnels under the city. Jewish tailors turned New York into the garment capital of the world. Greek and Armenian grocers fed the neighbourhoods. In Chicago, Polish steelworkers, Czech brewers, and Slovak miners powered the city's industries. In Pennsylvania and West Virginia, thousands of men descended into dark coal mines, sometimes never seeing daylight for a week. In California, Chinese, Japanese, and Mexican immigrants harvested crops that fed the nation. Immigrants were the backbone of America's working class, but they also became the heart of its civic life. They organised labour unions. They marched for fair wages and safer conditions. They joined strikes and protests, risking everything for better futures. In 1911, when the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York caught fire, 146 workers, mostly young immigrant women, died. The doors had been locked to prevent them from leaving early. That tragedy shocked the nation and led to sweeping labour reforms. But it was the voices of immigrants that demanded those changes, and kept demanding more. In politics, they gained power slowly. Irish Americans were among the first to find political footing, especially in cities like Boston and New York. Eventually others followed. Polish Americans formed voting blocs. Italian Americans ran for city councils. Jewish Americans became key voices in labour movements. Though prejudice lingered, the barriers began to crack, and even as they tried to fit in, many immigrant families kept their traditions alive. They celebrated feast days, kept holy days, danced to traditional music, and taught their children to respect both their heritage and their new country. Bilingual newspapers flourished. Community theatres and folk festivals helped preserve the culture. What started as survival became celebration. There were darker chapters too. Anti-immigrant groups like the Ku Klux Klan didn't only target African Americans, they also targeted Catholics, Jews, and Southern Europeans. Lynchings and riots weren't unheard of. But for every brick thrown, immigrants laid two more in building a better life. Over time, what once was foreign became familiar. A generation that began life with strange accents and strange names gave way to children named Joe, Mary, Frank, and Rose. American through and through. By 1950, over 60% of Americans could trace their ancestry to someone who arrived during the great waves of immigration from 1880 to 1924. They had come from tiny villages, big cities, and war-torn countrysides. They had crossed oceans, learned new languages, endured slums, low pay and discrimination. And yet, they stayed. They worked. They raised families. They changed the country. Immigration in the 1900s wasn't just a policy or a population shift. It was a human story, millions of human stories, of risk, resilience, and reinvention. These were not just the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. They were builders, mothers and fathers, writers, bakers, fighters and dreamers. They were the lifeblood of a young, booming America, and their legacy lives on in every corner store, in every city skyline, in every last name that once sounded foreign and now sounds like home.